But it happens all the time. In fact, you might be surprised to know what the largest aid organization in the world is. It's called World Vision, with over 40,000 people in over 100 countries. That's more than CARE, Save the Children, the worldwide operations of the United States Agency for International Development, all combined. And if you didn't know that, it's because the good that religion does is sort of oft interred with its bones, but you hear about every depredation, every sin, every bad thing, and yet today, all over the world, there are millions of religious aid workers who are sustaining people in places that you've never heard of and never visited. Right before this conference, both Dinesh and I were in Mexico, in Puebla, at the Festival of Ideas, and I rode back to the airport with Nicholas Kristof from the New York Times, and we were talking about this issue, and he said, you know, everywhere I go, I see religious aid workers, day after day, year after year, and a difference, he said, between religious aid workers and others is they stay. They don't go when the crisis is over. And this parallels my own experience. When I was in Haiti, helping a friend rebuild an orphanage, almost every person I met was a religious aid worker. I remember going to the market in Haiti, and I met this man, and I said to him, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I'm a Mennonite, and I and my group are building homes in the rural areas outside of Port-au-Prince." So I said, "Why are you doing this?" He said, "Well, I've been here for about 5 or 6 years, and I came because my son was sent by the church community 20 years ago. And after 15 years of watching my son do this, I thought it's time for me to go." This story could be duplicated again and again and again. And in fact, if tomorrow you took religion out of the world would be tremendously impoverished in terms of the way in which people who are in trouble get help. Evangelical organizations were the first ones on the ground after the tsunami in Indonesia, and that story could be repeated again and again throughout the world. That's point one. Here's point two. The Oxford Handbook of Religion and Health is about to come out in 2012, the second edition. In case you won't find the time to read it, I'm now going to save you the time. This is a handbook that anthologizes over 3,000 studies from the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet, all peer-reviewed journals that are not particularly sympathetic to religion. And this is what it says. Religious Americans give more to charity, volunteer more, participate in civic processes more, attend more meetings, are more likely to vote, to volunteer, less likely to drink, divorce, do drugs. They are much more inclined to be optimistic and feel meaningful about life. They're less inclined to depression, less inclined to suicide, less inclined to suicidal thoughts. They're much more helpful in their communities. If you want to measure altruism and empathy, the best measure is not age, gender, income, education. It's whether you're involved in a religious community. I'll give you one study at the University of Miami. They studied people who'd been diagnosed with AIDS, whether they turned to religion or away from religion. Those who turned to religion several months later had lower viral loads, lower CD4 counts. They were healthier than those who didn't. In fact, religion, if you're part of a religious community as measured by attending services and reading scripture and praying, it adds on average 7 years to your life if you're a white American male, 14 years if you're an African American male. Now, the dean of this research, Harold Koenig at Duke University, says that he has to point out to you that you may spend those 7 years in church, but nonetheless, you have to decide what you want to do with the time. Still, you have the time to do it. All of this is a way of emphasizing that religion and being part of a religious community does enormous good. I see it day after day, week after week. The little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love about which Wordsworth wrote, that's what religious people do, and in part because it's a system that encourages goodness, which is why when a religious person does something wrong, people get particularly upset. How can he do this? He's supposed to be religious. Every time someone complains about the synagogue, the call begins as follows. How in a synagogue could you, which is a way of saying you're supposed to aspire to be better. And that's exactly right. Mother Teresa, was once tending to the wounds of a leper in Calcutta and wiping the suppurating wounds from this sick and dying person. And a journalist who'd been following her around for several days said to her, "I wouldn't do that for $1 million. And without looking up, she said, "Neither would I." It's true. Many people of all different beliefs and no belief do good in this world. But if you want to find an organized system that encourages people to be better, to transcend themselves, that seeks to make the world colorful, kind, compassionate, giving, good, a system that often fails, but at least aspires to that, not in little enclaves of this class or this school, but worldwide, consistently, the only one we have ever had is religion. The world without it would be a poorer, sadder, and crueler place. Thank you.
Thank you, David Wolpe. And here's where we are. We are halfway through the opening round of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate. I'm John Donvan of ABC News. We have 4 debaters, 2 teams of 2, fighting it out over this motion: the world would be better off without religion. We've heard from the first 2 speakers, and now on to the third. Speaking for the motion, Matthew Chapman. He is a writer and co-founder and president of Science Debate, and in a sense is our real Renaissance man tonight. You've also directed films, written books, written magazine articles. You were particularly fascinated by a case I also covered of the Dover School Board wanting to push back against the theory of evolution. And you wrote extensively about that. Of course, you do have some vested interest in your. It's on your mother's side. Your great-great-grandfather.
It's my great-great-grandfather on my mother's side.
All right, so you have some sparkling DNA walking around tonight as you come to this argument, ladies and gentlemen. Matthew Chapman.
Thank you. I'm not a professional like these guys, so I'm going to read my notes. I apologize. Religion makes 2 big claims. God really exists, and religion makes us behave better. But does religion make us behave better? To partially answer that question, let me read you a verse or 2 from the Bible. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 11 and 12. When men strive together one with another, and the wife of the one draweth near for to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smiteth him, and putteth forth her hand, and taketh him by the secrets, then shalt thou cut off her hand. Roughly translated, this means that if you're in a fight and your wife tries to help you by grabbing your opponent's balls, you should chop her hand off. It's there. I mean, I can show you. I know it's kind of cheap to poke fun at the Bible because it's so easy, but there is a serious point here, which is that far from making us behave better, religion often complicates and distorts morality. By any reasonable standards, hacking bits off your wife is far worse than her squeezing your enemy's nuts. The thing is that in almost any holy book, you can find something that will validate just about anything. And afterwards, you don't have to defend the humanity of your actions or take responsibility because God told you to do it. Believe it or not, there's more atheism up here than faith. A.C. Grayling and I are atheists. David and Dinesh are too, except when it comes to their own religion. Every other religion they're atheist about. This is why religion is divisive. Everyone on earth wants food, water, shelter, love for their children to grow up to be happy and in a peaceful world. These common desires are so profound, they ought to make war an absurdity, a violence against self. Religion, however, makes everyone an infidel to someone. But we're no longer ignorant, isolated tribes who think the earth is flat and don't know what lies around the corner. We have photographs of our planet from space, and most of us have met people of many races. We know our world and who we share it with. And we also know that critical worldwide problems will require worldwide unity. In this context, religion's continuing insistence that my God is better than yours is disastrous, which leads me to credulity. There are literally thousands of gods available. which one you believe in is really just an accident of birth. If David and Dinesh had been born in Afghanistan, they'd both be Muslim, probably, or they'd be dead. Like most people, like most believers, however, they have faith in their inherited gods. They haven't tested the rest because there's far too many of them. How then do they know that their God exists and the other gods don't, or that their God is better than the other gods? Because they've been told by an authority figure. And here's how he did it. He said, our God is supreme, but he's invisible. We have no proof he exists. But if you have faith, if you make a big effort to believe in him, you will believe in him. It's fantastic. They take the weakest point of the argument and make it a condition of entry that you overlook it. But if, in the most important area of your life, your philosophy no less, the first thing you learn as a child is that faith is absolutely essential and evidence absolutely isn't, how can this not affect the way you think about everything? You've been brainwashed to be credulous and submissive to authority. This affects many aspects of life, including the functioning of democracy and the understanding of science, both of which demand that you insist on evidence, question everything, and take nothing on faith from anyone. Here's an example. Evolution through natural selection over billions of years is one of the best supported theories in science, but 40 to 50% of Americans believe the Earth is only 6,000 to 8,000 years old and that God made us as we are now. Nearly 50%. I mean, it's really extraordinary. It's unheard of in any other culture except Muslim countries. I've written widely on this subject and met creationists of all types. Often they have, I'd say usually, they have no idea what evolution is. But they dispute it with passion from a religious standpoint. Faith over reason. Evidence infuriates them, as does science itself. And this antipathy to science has slowed down stem cell research, continues to harm the health of women and girls, and contributes to cynicism about scientific issues like global warming. But none of this captures the human suffering caused by religion. I grew up next to my gay uncle and his partner. When I was 9, I discovered they faced long prison sentences if their homosexuality was revealed. This was justified by Leviticus 20:13, and the verse was often quoted by both politicians and the clergy. If a man lieth with a man as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. This barbaric verse is still used by Christians, including Catholics and evangelicals, and violence is only its most obvious consequence. I end where I began. Religion claims to provide morality, but as can be seen in its divisiveness, its homophobia, and in its almost universal subjugation of women, it just as often deforms morality. The question isn't whether religion can sometimes do good. Of course it can and has. The question is, can we come up with something better that does not depend on dangerous and childish faith in thousands of competing gods? Can we persuade people that it's possible to live a good, peaceful, and happy life guided only by human conscience and modern knowledge? When people who believe in martyrdom and an afterlife will soon get weapons of mass destruction, I think we have to, that we can, and that we will. And that's why I ask you to support the motion that the world would be better off without religion. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew Chapman. This is our motion, the world would be better off without religion. And now here to speak against the motion, Dinesh D'Souza. He's the president of the King's College. He is a leading conservative thinker in the country from a very young age, starting in his college years. As a young man also, he was an advisor to President Reagan. You've also written a lot of books. Now, your opponent has written 3 times as many books as you, but I hate to tell you, Anthony, that Dinesh has written about 5 times as many bestsellers as you have. So I think you trump on that one. Ladies and gentlemen, Dinesh D'Souza.
Thank you. It's my peculiar fate in this debate to be speaking last and therefore to have to digest the statements of the other speakers. I must say this puts me in an odd position. I feel a bit like the mosquito in the nudist colony. I'm not sure where to begin. I guess I'll begin by noting